Another year has passed and HTC's next flagship is finally here, but does it live up to the hype? Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Dom, and today we're getting into my full review of the HTC One M9. As you can probably tell, there's not much of a difference in design when compared to the M9's predecessor. Everything looks nearly identical, but there are some small details that solidify this flagship as an upgrade. In my opinion, there are only a handful of important things to discuss with the HTC One M9. We have design, camera performance, specifications, and software. First off, the design is nearly the same as last year's model. Some people were disappointed in this choice by HTC, but in my opinion, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The M8 was a very well-built smartphone, probably one of the best in 2014, and the M9 continues that legacy with an all-metal design. Very, very classy stuff. It looks very nice. When comparing the M9 to the M8, you get a greater sense of grip this time around. The sharp edges along the front side provide sheer satisfaction in the hand, and for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to slip as much. In addition to that, the M9 is slightly thicker and only millimeters shorter than the M8. The gunmetal look here is a shade darker as well, but I definitely prefer that to the gunmetal variation from last year. Across the front of the device, we still have HTC's famous front-facing stereo boom sound speakers, and to my ears, they sound pretty much identical to last year's model. But that's not a bad thing because these are the best speakers that you're gonna find on a smartphone. So as for the display, we're beginning to develop a pattern. Everything is exactly the same. We have 5 inches at 1080p, and that's identical to the HTC One M8. The M8 had a great display, and the M9 still has a great display. It's nice and crisp, colorful, everything that you would want from a smartphone. No, it's not 2K, but in my opinion, that's not a big deal. Around the outside of the body, HTC has finally relocated its lock/power button. It used to be on the top over on the M8, and now they moved it on the side underneath the volume buttons. I'm a big fan of the volume buttons actually being 2 separate buttons when compared to the volume rocker on the M8, but I am not a fan of the lock button placement. The problem is that the lock button is below the 2 volume buttons. It initially sounds good, at least better than being hard to reach on the top of the device as we saw with the M8, but where it's at just really makes your thumb strain to reach it. The button is textured, so feeling it out isn't necessarily a problem, but at the same time, I don't want to have to feel out the location of the lock button every time I go to lock or unlock the device. Of course, we do still have the famous double tap to wake feature found here on the M9, but in my opinion, the lock button would have been better placed on the other side where the micro SD card slot is located. Now, if you couldn't do that, then just go ahead and stick it back on the top, because right here, it's just kind of uncomfortable and awkward to reach. The IR blaster is still present along the top side, and on the bottom, you'll find the headphone jack and micro USB port. Around the back, we have a brand new 20.7 megapixel camera, which replaces the HTC One M8's ultra pixel camera and slightly changes the design as well. HTC has also removed the duo camera feature from the back as found on the M8, but I'm not really bothered by this change as I never found it to be an important feature to begin with. Now, as far as specifications go, on the inside of the M9, we have a 64-bit octa-core Snapdragon 810 processor. We also have 3 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of internal storage, which can be expanded using the micro SD card slot up to 128 gigabytes, the Adreno 430 GPU, and a 2840 milliamp hour battery. As mentioned, HTC swapped out the ultra pixel camera that was introduced with the M8 and replaced it with a new 20.7 megapixel sensor. For all of you fans out there, you'll still find the ultra pixel goodness on the front side, but it's much better served as a low-light selfie camera. The question is, does the rear sensor perform as great as its megapixel count would suggest? With 20.7 megapixels, this is the proof that megapixels aren't everything. This camera is not great. I'm just gonna go ahead and put that out there right away. Looking through these photos here, it's hard to give you a solid opinion on this camera because the M9 just can't make up its mind sometimes. We either have something super overexposed or something very underexposed, or sometimes something in the middle. But even when you dig deeper and kind of zoom in on these photos, you can see that there's not a lot of detail happening there. The colors look kind of washed out, and I'm not a big fan of just the color and the auto white balance and things like that overall. I take a lot of pictures with smartphones, and I found it incredibly difficult to take a good picture with the HTC One M9. Now, I'm not here to trash the camera, but these photos are definitely the proof. Some of them turned out okay, I will give it that. But at the end of the day, it's just not a good camera. And that's not due to the sensor most likely. It's probably the software processing on the other side of things that's making this bad. I mean, you'd think with that many megapixels and maybe a fresh sensor inside, you'd be able to pull out some good photos on this thing, but I just had a very difficult time. So hopefully a software update will come out in the future and I can reassess the camera situation on the M9 and bring you a follow-up review. Real quick though, before I leave camera altogether, I wanted to talk about the video. So I took some sample video on the M9. It shoots up to UHD resolution from that 20.7 megapixel camera. It has 0 optical image stabilization, 0 video stabilization, at least on 4K, and it looks very, very bad. I'm sorry, HTC. I really, truly wanted to like this camera, but it's just not doing it for me. Moving along to software, this is where you'll find some of the biggest changes on the HTC One M9. The device ships with Lollipop running HTC's Sense 7.0 overlay, and there are a few noteworthy features to discuss. First off, HTC has implemented very extensive theming capabilities, which I've definitely grown to love. Sense 7 allows you to change quite a bit within the user interface. There's a theme market of sorts with a wide selection available as well. You can download full themes, icon packs, sounds, fonts, and even customize the user interface colors based on your preference or have it automatically match your wallpaper. If the available choices don't suit your needs, HTC has put together a web-based creator called ThemeMaker that will allow you to completely customize your own theme. I'm not the biggest Sense fan in the world, so I hopped online to ThemeMaker Pro, which you can find. I'll link it down below in the description for you, and I put together my own theme. HTC also has a pretty cool new widget that can sit on your home screen and suggest different apps based on your location and what it thinks you will like as you use the device more. So we have a home section, out section, and work section, and depending on which one you have chosen, the apps will actually change and rearrange for you. We also do have a suggestions folder which will suggest apps that you might like, and there's a downloads folder which will show you all of your recent downloads. Another cool feature that I found here actually resides within the app switcher. So if we hop into the recent app section, we have the normal HTC Sense kind of cards that are in here. But if you don't like that style, if you tap on the little settings button there, go to settings, you can actually change the layout to a card view, which I find to be much better. It gives you that kind of lollipop look and feel, which I think is much cleaner. Performance on the M9 is great, and that's one of its strong points. The user interface is very snappy, and the hardware inside is definitely being put to work. You can feel it. Literally, this thing actually gets warm when doing some of the simplest things. Now, I'm not saying that it gets hot or it's overheating or anything like that. I'm not going down that road, but it does get a little warm. It's not uncomfortable, but it's warmer than, let's say, the M8 performing the exact same task, or pretty much any other smartphone that I've used within the last year. There's honestly not a lot to talk about in this department. The M9 just performs flat out. It actually is very snappy and it runs pretty quick. I've had no problems with apps freezing or crashing or anything like that. It's just been an all-around good experience. As far as battery life goes, I have a quick disclaimer here. I haven't used this phone long enough to determine long-term battery life. That being said, the battery life should last you through the day with average use. I found on heavier days it would drain very quickly. Certainly not a deal breaker, things that I've noticed on other smartphones that have been recently released, but like I said, with average use, you should be able to make it through an entire day. If you'd like to see an M9 revisited video in the future, maybe discussing the camera performance, if software actually fixes that, or the battery life, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and let me know. Overall, the people at HTC did what they thought was best for their 2015 flagship, and as I've been saying for a while, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unfortunately, HTC forgot to fix some of the things that were broke about the M8. So the M9, we're seeing a pattern developed here where overall we have a great built smartphone, snappy performance, but very subpar performance in other key areas such as the camera. Let me put it this way, the M9 overall is a great smartphone. Like I said, it has a few issues that are probably important to a lot of people, but that's not the real story here. What you should actually be thinking about is the fact that the M8 is cheaper now than the M9, and that might be better for you to pick up right now. Hopefully software will fix this in the future. Hopefully we see some things come through that will make this camera better, because I really wanted to just love this camera, but it didn't happen this time around. So I'll let you know what happens in the future. Be sure to follow me on Twitter for updates in case anything comes out, and I don't have time to put up a video about the update. But like I said, if you want to see a revisited review of the HTC One M9, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and let me know what you think about the M9 down in the comments section. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. This is Dom, and have a great day.